Imagine, just a
Yeah,
week away.
and less than like 5 hours after we came back from the shir. Anyway, so this week's Parshat Shelach, it's appropriate also that it's doing Shelach this week. Shelach is to go out, this week's story, in this week's Parsha, not story, this week's Parsha, Moshe goes out, sends out spies to a foreign nation, to Eretz Yisrael, to check it out, to do some recon. And for apparently, according to all the news, Israel sent out spies for over 20 years to to build out the wonderful situation that we're in right now. And Bezrat Hashem next week or this week, 5 hours from where we are today, some more good news and more interesting things. Hopefully, without the sirens on my phone going off like crazy.
This is just for what Manis Friedman said. It could be that all the nations are going to be calling our phones for Torah, for the Yiddish kind.
Yeah.
For the
So, okay. So an interesting mention, it's something that I just noticed learning some of the Zera Shimshon this week. The Zera Shimshon in Parshat Shelach uses a lot of sources of, I don't want to say Kabbalah because it is Kabbalah, but it's not stuff that I necessarily understand. So we're going to try to do as much as we can without having to go into each one of them, go into some of the things of Kabbalah. But if there are any questions or things like that, I'm just going to do as best a job in making in translating or explaining. So anyway, so we'll do Drush. We'll start with Drush Bet. It's a short one. Drush Bet is a short one, but I think it's a really powerful one, and it teaches us also something about how we perceive reality and what's actually going on in the world. So, as we know in this week's Parsha, the Meraglim, who they were, maybe we'll get to in another Torah, but we know that they were on a mission to explore the land of Eretz Yisrael. Although at this time it's called the land of Canaan. They had a showdown, right? They come back after 40 days. They have a showdown with Bnei Israel. They explain to Bnei Israel what's going on, and they have a showdown with Kalev. Yeshua remains silent. Maybe also we'll get to as to why Yeshua remains silent. Another Torah, but the question is, so this Torah Bet specifically talks about the conversation or the moment after they get back, and it says, "Vayotziu dibat haaretz asher taru ota haaretz asher avanu ba latur ota eretz ochelet yoshvehi." So the Psukim say that we did indeed, the Meraglim tell Bnei Israel that we went there, we saw it, and it's an eretz that eats its own people. That's the famous in the English translation, right? It's a land that devours its people. And right afterwards, Kalev, what does he say? Right before that, Kalev says that we can successfully conquer the land, right? So he said, the question is kashe. Daha kol kavanatam hatalo tzi Hashem ra l'Eretz Yisrael, v'lama lo amru za mitchila. Right? If their whole idea, right? If you think about it from a public speaking perspective, is what's my idea? Is to discourage people from going. Right? In this case, the Meraglim, they're clearly all they wanted to do is tell people we shouldn't go in. So if that's the case, what's the first thing you want to do? Right? If you want to make a statement, you make a bold statement from the beginning. You don't have to. Some people say you should build it up, but there's a question as to why don't they just say that this is like start the whole thing with the whole report? Like, if you're going on a line of it's not good, start from it's not good. Why do you have to keep on kind of like stretching it out? The real question that they have, which I think is a powerful question, is why does Kalev have to talk in order for this whole thing to happen? Meaning, if they're going to talk negatively, then don't have Kalev talk at all, right? It kind of breaks your flow of conversation. You don't need to have someone interrupt you and say, hey, I think this land is bad. It's not a good place for us to live. But let's we'll interrupt let's stop our news. We interrupt this news for some good news, right? Right. So that doesn't make sense, right? So he said the question is, why would they want Kalev to interrupt? It doesn't make it necessarily from their perspective. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So he says, again, it was on Drush Bet. The main question is, why did Bnei Israel, why did the Meraglim allow for Kalev to interrupt their conversation and their flow? If they knew what we're trying to do, if they were trying to do is to discourage Bnei Israel from even considering going to Eretz Yisrael. So the question is why, right? If we know why, but the question is why. Right. So why put Kalev in at all? Like, what does Kalev add to the situation, right? If anything, Kalev's conversation doesn't allow them to really drive their point home. So the question is, why would it, right? So the question is, why did Kalev? Or if you want to say, let's put a debate up. So have Kalev talks first, and then you could throw in your whole, and then you can kibosh the whole thing by saying this is true, this is true, this is true, or this is not true, and this is what we saw, the whole thing. But having it in between, it doesn't necessarily go with the right mindset. So the question is why. So the Sefer Azar, the Zohar, he says he answers it answers his question with a piece of Torah of the Zohar. Now, what the Zohar says is relatively straightforward. I don't pretend to understand anything that the Zohar says, but what it means. But I think there's something deeper than just what the Zohar says, and probably many layers of what the Zohar says. He says, Moshe Masar lemeraglim kavanat Hashem HaKadosh. Shim yavo haknanim lahara lahem yichavnu b'zev Hashem v'lo yu mitzarim. So the Zohar says that Moshe, before the Meraglim left, he gave them one of the names of Hashem, and he said, if God forbid something happens, use this name, have this in Kavanah, have Kavanah with this name, and everything will be all right. And then the Canaanim won't cause any trouble. Now, again, we have to maybe a little bit of a background to this idea. A little bit of background to this idea is that we know that Bnei Israel, when the Meraglim go into Canaan, I guess we'll get to it afterwards. I'm going to stop. I was going to continue it, but I think they talk about it afterwards. So let's skip, pause for that. So he says, that way the name that Moshe gives the Meraglim a name, and he says, use this name of Hashem, whatever that means. Use this name of Hashem. Have this in mind when you're going in, and then if something happens, use that as your cheat code. And he says, Masoret Shema Kadisha Masar Lon Moshe. So in the words of the Zohar, it says that Moshe taught them a certain name of Hashem, and through this they were protected. So now we can understand what Kalev says. Now, if we read the pasuk, what Kalev says, "Me'ata kasher shamusha Kalev amar alo na'aleh ve'arashnu ota ki yochol nuchala." Right. Accordingly, once we understand that Moshe gave the Meraglim, including Kalev and Yoshua, a name of Hashem. Now we could say, look what it says. It says, Shosofei Tevo Tushem Havaya. Right? The Yud Kei Vav Kei, what the final letters of Na'aleh V'Yarashnu Ota Ki. Right? If they're just those four words, Na'aleh V'Yarashnu Ota Ki. If you look from the word ki, working backwards from the word ki, the last letter is Yud, Ota is the last letter is Hey, V'Yarashnu the last letter is Vav, and Na'aleh is Vav, is Hey. So you have the last name of Hashem, Klomar Bizchut Shem HaKadosh Nitzol. Right? They understood that Kalev meant to say that we were protected that we were saved from the Canaanim in the merit and the zchut of Hashem's name. Right? So basically, Kalev was telling them, hey, I knew what protected us. What protected us was the name of Hashem.
Shalom Aleichem.
Aleichem Shalom.
Shalom.
So you're saying that during this fast footwork
Yeah.
what was it? Rosh Tevis, Sophie Tevis?
The Safei
They're
Tevis.
doing it on the spot. And they're chopping.
Well, so I don't know if it's doing it on the spot. They're more like trying to say, is like Kalev is trying to say, hey, we were successful because this, that, and the other thing. And Bnei Israel and the rest of the Meraglim are saying is, no. We know what Kalev is trying to hide, and we have an argument, if you will.
Okay, so say it again, because there's
Okay, no worries. I'm going to say it again.
Not the whole thing.
No,
Unless you want to say it for them.
No, I'm going to say it for them anyway. So we're doing Jerush Bet. For those who are watching live, we're doing a quick review of Jerush Bet. It's right in in the showdown after the Meraglim come back from Eretz Canaan. And in that point, of course, we know that the first thing that the Meraglim do is they start talking about how the people of Canaan were large, and the fruits were massive, and we can't do it. And then Caleb comes in and says one or two sentences, and they say, no, don't worry, we can do it, we got it. This Alon na'aleh ki yachol nuchala, right? So the question is, why let a Caleb interrupt, right? If you want Caleb to talk, have him talk in the beginning. Or that's not the Zera Shimshon's question, but he says, why Caleb interrupt at all, right? If you're on the mindset that you want to have a debate, so you have the debate, the person who's pro first, because your angle is con, right? Your angle is I don't want them to go in. So have him talk first, and then you talk, and you just kind of rile the crowd up, and they'll say, okay, we don't want to go in, right? That's definitely an approach, but having him talk in the middle is kind of like you want them to negative. If you want to try to convince people not to do something, having someone in the middle throw in a sentence or two, it doesn't necessarily go the right.